Hey everyone, this is Zephyr, and welcome to the Baileywiki channel, where we teach everyday DMs how to create truly amazing experiences for their players by combining art and technology. We also make modular systems and scenes that you can use without any setup, like this spider layer for Foundry Virtual Tabletop that's going to be today's backdrop. Today, we're back automating Foundry using Foundry's regions and Monk's active tile triggers. Today, we're going to be combining MATT and regions along with Monk's Tokenbar in order to apply active effects as environmental regional hazards like this web trap here. We're going to go through a kind of basics bare bones version of this in detail, and then we're going to do an overview of a more complex setup that has some extra options and bells and whistles. Effects like this are fantastic ways to add an extra bit of dynamics and interest to different combat encounters. What's especially good is that because we're using active effects, we can make this almost completely system agnostic. It's going to vary from system to system as to what active effects you have available and how you can add or modify or interact with them. However, these actions are not going to be tied to any specific system or module other than Monk's active tile triggers, Foundry's regions, and Monk's Tokenbar. So with all of that said, let's dive right into the basic setup for this environmental hazard. To get started, we're going to design our tile here. And this tile is going to trigger when someone comes into it and also when someone begins their turn there. So we'll open up our tile configuration and go to the trigger section. And here, the main things we want to make sure of are it's active. I also like to have history on. That way I can troubleshoot things, and we'll leave this restricted tokens and controlled by set to anyone and allow all tokens. When you're done testing, you may want to change this to only player tokens, or when controlled by the player only, something like that, so that your spider that's actually in the layer is not going to be affected. Then for the when section, we'll have this enter, and also we will use this combat turn start. From here, you also want to make sure that the token must have sight to trigger is turned off. And for testing purposes, it's good to have the allow when pause, but it's not technically necessary. With all of that, I am going to apply these updates, or you can update the tile and then reopen it. Then we'll go into our actions. And so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in some landings. And here we're going to use the smart landings feature. We've covered landings more extensively in some previous Automating Foundry videos, but if you begin anything with an underscore and then you start to type, it will give you some suggestions, and these are automatic landings that are going to redirect based off of the trigger method or trigger information or data here. So we've got the enter one, and we'll go ahead and do turn. So this is not a turn start. There's just turn. So don't go looking for start or anything like that. It is turn. And now for both of these, we're going to end up creating a role request. And that's going to be from Monk's Tokenbar. And the request role for the beginning is going to be dexterity. And we are going to either use the triggering token or the current tokens. I would recommend using current tokens in case you have any other filters in here. It's just slightly more robust down the line. You can set the DC to 15. And you can add whatever flavor text you want here. Same thing with the bypass dialogue and auto roll. Those are kind of personal preferences. If you want this to be flexible, like maybe someone makes a compelling argument for, hey, I want to be able to use a strength saving throw for this, or I want to be able to use an intelligence saving throw or something like that, then maybe you leave the bypass dialogue turned off. That's going to give you a prompt from Tokenbar where you can change what you're requesting. But if you want this to always be dexterity, then you can go ahead and turn on the bypass dialogue. It also makes it a little bit snappier for you. And then auto roll is, do you want your players to be able to roll this themselves, or are you going to just take it out of their hands and automatically roll for them? For the purposes of this video, we're going to have it set to bypass the dialogue and auto roll, so it's going to be nice and fast. Then for the continue if, for the most bare bones setup, then we're just going to worry about tokens that fail here, and then we're just going to continue if any failed. And from here, we will insert below. There is an active effect option, and this works for absolutely any system. And you can select from a variety of effects, and different systems have different ways that you can add effects here. And in this case, we're just going to be using the restrained option, and we're going to have this add effect right here. So here we have add restrained to the current tokens, and then that's what happens if you fail. So now we need to add in a filter for conditions here. So it's going to be down in the filter section, and we're going to filter by condition, and this will basically let us check for active effects. So use current tokens, and we're going to look for restrained. And you can do this kind of either direction. We're either looking for people to already have restrained or to not have restrained. It's pretty similar. I'm going to leave it as has restrained here. And then we're going to add in a check entity count filter. And we want current tokens. In this case, if we have a token that is already restrained, then we're going to continue down. We're going to have at least one current token, so then we'll continue. If we don't have one, I'm actually just going to put in the enter landing here. So we're going to start back up at the top. If you want to, you could add an additional landing that does not have a stop when reached in code, and you could redirect to there for cleanliness, but this works just as well. Basically what this is saying, if you start your turn here and you have not been trapped in the webs, we're going to go back up to the top, and it's going to have you try and save to get out of the webs or avoid being stuck in the webs still. So there's the logic for starting our turn when we're not already restrained. If we are restrained, it's going to be the next action down below here. We're going to skip over this check entity count basically because we'll pass it. And here we're going to request a new roll. And this will again be our current tokens, and we're going to make this a strength saving throw with a DC of 15. We'll add in our flavor text. And we'll again bypass our dialogue and auto roll just to make this a little snappier. And then in this case, we only really care if they succeed for this bare bones version. So we're going to have tokens that succeed and continue if any passed. So if you fail, nothing changes. But if you do succeed, then we're going to go to our active effect option again. Again, current tokens, and then we're going to select restrained. And then this time we're going to remove that filter. So how this should work is when we first enter, we're going to have a dexterity saving throw for anyone who entered. And then if they failed, we're going to add restraint to them. Then anyone who starts their turn there, if they are not already restrained, we'll go back up to the top and repeat that saving throw again. And if someone already is restrained, then they're going to make a strength saving throw. And on a success for that, we will remove the restrained condition from them. Let's go ahead and update our tile, and we'll give it a tap. All right, I've got my guy Gomer here, and he's stepped in, and we can see we have a roll coming through. We have this dexterity saving throw, which he has unfortunately failed. So now we are restrained. If we go ahead and add him to combat, and we begin the combat, we'll see that at the start of his turn, we have automatically rolled the strength saving throw, and we have succeeded. Probably because I bumped up his strength a good bit to make sure that we can actually get through this. If we start another turn, now that we're not restrained, it's going to ask for that dexterity saving throw, and it's going to restrain us once again. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the restrained condition from him. And then I'll also demonstrate what this looks like if we don't have the bypass dialogue and auto roll set up in here. So now when we step in, we're going to get a pop-up as a GM here, and you can also choose whether to show the DC or not, or hide names, etc. And you can make adjustments. So if you want instead this to be an intelligence saving throw, you could do that. We'll leave it at dexterity. And if you hit request, then it's going to put a pop-up in the chat for the player to click on. And they have their roll dialogue as normal. And here, if you do request with roll, it's going to automatically roll it for them. So now with our tile in place, we can now hook this up to a region. So we'll go ahead and move Gomer out of here, and we'll go into our regions layer. This is super simple. If you watched our Automating Foundry video that covers using regions with Monk's active tile triggers, this is going to be largely some review here for you. But we're going to go ahead and create a new region and select it. And then we'll just draw in this new area. and we'll edit that. And we'll just call this the web region. And for behaviors, we add in a trigger tile. So we've created this new region. To add in this tile, we're simply going to click on the little book icon next to tile. It's going to copy our ID and paste that, and then we can add the document. Importantly, we need to make sure we have this trigger using event, and that's going to send data over. And then we're going to select our events to subscribe to. So we're going to have token enters, and we're going to have token starts turn. Then update our region behavior. And importantly, sometimes if you are setting up the name, you need to update it on this tab before you update behaviors. And now when Gomer steps into the region, we're going to have our nice little prompt. And when we advance the turn, it's going to have us do our prompt for the strength saving throw as well. And if you open up the tile, you can then look at the view history and you can see the different timestamps here. And you'll notice that that information is still being passed on from our region, no problem. When using a region to trigger the tile, you may need to remove the whens here on the tile and instead change this to manual activation. It's still going to be triggered properly by the region and it will still use the information to go to the proper landings. However, I have found that it makes it so that you don't ever get double activations. Occasionally, you can have situations where the tile gets triggered generically and also gets sent the information that it was triggered by someone starting their turn or entering, and it can cause some double activations. So setting it to just manually activate completely eliminates this issue. So that is the basic setup that is just going to be prompting us for that condition. And then we have a saving throw when we enter, and a saving throw if we're still under the condition when we start our turn within that tile. And if we're not under that condition, we'll go back and we'll repeat that first save. Now let's take a look at some more advanced options that you can add into this. Now I'm on a version of the spider layer map that is from our Caves release for our Patreon collection. And I've modified it slightly. I've turned off token vision so that we can see everything nice and clearly. And I've also gone ahead and added in regions for triggering our slightly more advanced tile over here. So if I go ahead and grab Gomer and we step into these webs, we'll see that we get the nice prompt for the dexterity saving throw. And it's also going to have a message indicating that we've been caught in the webs. Then if we advance the turn, it's going to automatically do our strength saving throw and have a message that we failed that particular save as well. And we can repeat this process until Gomer hopefully manages to break free. And we'll see that when we successfully break out of the webs, we get a message to that effect as well, that we've broken free. And repeating that on entry, there's also a success message for avoiding getting caught in the webs. So how does our tile actually differ here? Well, key results are going to be in the saving throws. We are changing this instead of continuing for just tokens that fail or tokens that succeed to all tokens and always continuing. Then we're going to use another action that is redirect request results. And this is going to take all of the tokens that either pass the check or fail the check to their respective landings. You can also optionally add an additional landing for both of these groups of tokens to head to after they have completed whatever code is beneath the respective landings. In this case, that doesn't really make sense here, but it is something to take a note of depending upon the complexity of interactions you're working with in your own traps and hazards. Then for these, we have the enter on the pass. And just like with our bare bones version, if you pass, nothing bad happens. We're just adding in a chat message. And you can use handlebar notation, which we also have covered in a previous Automating Foundry video. And we can use that to then call out the exact token name. And this is useful for giving us a nice clean log of who has stepped into the webs and who is trapped, etc. So it's a nice way to have a little bit of extra record keeping in case something gets messy or confusing with all of the different conditions going on. Then we have this set up to be a chat message only. Again, just to keep it nice and clean for our records, but you could also make this something like the character screaming out or whatever and making it in character and a chat bubble message as well. It's just one of many options for you on that. But it's nice to give some kind of confirmation that this person did not get trapped. Then for our failure, this is going to be where we add in our restrained condition using that active effect action. And then we have another chat message that is very similar to the success one, where we're using that handlebar notation to pass on the token name. And then we are just saying that they have been caught. Similarly, down below, we are using the saving throw for strength, and we have this set to continue with all tokens all the time, and then redirecting the request results to a pass and fail landing. And then here, if they pass, we're removing restrained, and then we are giving them a chat message that is confirming that they have broken free. And if they fail, then we are just telling them that they're still caught in the webs and they did indeed fail. And of course, back here up at the top, if someone has the restrained condition, then we're continuing on. And if not, we're going back up to that top enter section where we're going to do that dexterity saving throw that we started with. And so that is the slightly modified, slightly improved version here. Now you can add in all kinds of different things. For example, if you wanted there to be damage involved in this trap, you could then have half damage or no damage in your passes versus your fails. You could also include additional components here, such as extra conditions, or maybe if you pass, you don't get restrained, but you get a different condition applied to you, etc. And as far as some caveats or some other potential things to explore here, you may want to apply a condition no matter what when someone comes in, or take some damage no matter what when someone comes in. Then that is where you would have this continue to landing option here. So after the pass things have gone through and the fail things have gone through, we're going to go to a combined thing where, okay, you may have passed the saving throw, or you did fail the saving throw, and everybody is going to take 1d6 damage or something to that effect. You can also add in some additional options here. For example, maybe you want this to have an option for when people exit the tile. If someone exits the tile, then it's going to remove the condition. That way, if someone gets forcibly moved, or if you're using a condition that's not something that stops movement like restrained does, then it makes sense to then remove that from them. Some important notes as well here is we're using the active effects because they are system agnostic and they are very robust. This should work in every system, no matter what you've got, and it should be very reliable. Each system is going to differ in terms of what those active effects are or those standard conditions are, and the tools that you have to work with and manipulate them, but you are going to have that as an option for you every single time. Whereas if we use the attack action and we build something out, then that might not work depending upon the automation suites you're using or depending upon the system that you're using. For example, Pathfinder 2e updates pretty frequently, and so the attack action doesn't work very often if you wanted to have a saving throw-based attack from something or a similar trap type effect. Similarly, with D&D 5e, MIDI QOL and its role automation can sometimes take those attacks out of your hands and not do the proper targeting with Monk's active tile triggers. So those are things to keep in mind, and that's why we're using the active effects. A big thing to watch out for is if you are using an encounter where the condition that you're applying with these tiles is also something that the monster can afflict, then you may need to come up with some extra fail-safes for the restrained condition, or you need to have an additional condition or an additional way to filter for that to make sure that you're not removing restrained from a monster ability versus this environmental hazard. That's going to conclude this kind of mini tutorial on using Monk's active tile triggers and regions to create environmental hazards with those regions in Foundry. Hopefully this has been interesting to you. This is mainly intended as a way to get you thinking about ways you can leverage regions in interesting ways and geometry, and also combine that with some of the powerful effects of Monk's active tile triggers and how you can create interesting elements to your encounters. As we mentioned before, this is a largely system agnostic approach, and each system is going to have different ways to add in these active effects. So let us know what system you're working with and what you're going to build using this technology. Also, let us know if there's other things you think we should explore with this particular concept, or if there's other traps. This concept and this video originally arose out of a question that was posed in our Foundry Mastery Discord channel. And if you want to get involved in that conversation and discuss these ideas and how to implement them, then head over to our Patreon and join the Mastery program. You can also sign up for one-on-one coaching hours if you would like to tackle a problem or learn a new aspect of Foundry with me one-on-one. Again, this has been Zephyr with the Baileywiki channel. If you enjoyed watching this video, then subscribe to keep up with all of our latest content, and consider becoming a patron. Not only do you support the channel, we also gain access to all of our modular systems and scenes, like the caves we've shown off here today. Again, it's been Zephyr. Thanks so much for watching, happy gaming, and have a good one.